Hello, this is the Shensho Kobold, and today this is my story of the NPC that was supposed to die. I make a lot of NPCs off the spot in my campaigns, as most DMs do. No matter how much you might prep, no matter how many different tables and names of gatherings you might come up with, you often still just need to do, alright, Bob the NPC is, the shopkeeper that I wasn't expecting you to talk to, or that farmer that you decided to stop and ask questions and you decided to delve into his life story for some ungodly reason. This was a bit of an odd one. The party wasn't really supposed to get into this guy's story. He didn't have a story pre-written. It just kind of happened organically and fed into the other threads of what the party was doing. This is the story. The party was in a bustling city called Torhill. They had gotten wind of a kidnapping that was going to take place. The victims were to be the governor's son, Rinsk Theorn, and our bard's sister, Ronnie Drake. They apparently were going to meet up for a midnight rendezvous at this place called the Gardens. Basically a very high-end botanical garden that was in the city. The party couldn't get a hold of either of the two before it all happened, so they went up to the gardens and waited. Several hours later, with many stiff joints and aching muscles, then they finally saw the two people. They were walking down the path in deep thought. A couple moments later, a band of thugs run down the path towards them. The thugs grab the two and are about to make off with their prey. However, the party drops down from the trees and rushes out of the bushes that they were hiding in and quickly engaged thugs in fierce combat. The fight was short and brutal, leaving all but one of the thugs completely killed. One man suffered a quite grievous punch straight to the windpipe, which was quite a memorable moment. Our survivor, however, was a victim of several sword wounds. He was quite injured, but still kicking. They sat him up, cauterized his wounds so he wouldn't die on them immediately, and then immediately started asking him for information. The information they got was scanty. He wasn't told a whole hell of a lot. As he put it, quote, "All we were given was the target and the gold. We're just roll-level pawns. What do you expect?" End quote. Followed by a bitter laugh. The party keep pumping him for information, hoping to find something, some lead to go on. And it relates how he was engaged in this particular endeavor. Quote, 50 gold apiece. Any man who was willing. I can't say it was one of my proudest moments, but money talks, and the kid needs a new pair of shoes. End quote. After this, they talked to him a little bit more. Our bard was not fond of the idea of letting this guy go after he had tried to apprehend the bard's sister. However, the other party members, one in particular, picked up on the fact that the man mentioned a kid, and were a little more lenient to him. After receiving his scanty information, he was picked up for 50 gold and a shady bar. The party started talking amongst themselves what they're going to do next. After a short time, he interjects into their conversation. Look, I appreciate you all not killing me, but I've told you what I know. Would you mind telling me what you plan to do with me, though? I've got a kid back home, and I'd like to know if I'm going to see her again, or not. End quote. There were a few moments of silence around the table. The players took a moment to digest this new information. The first words spoken were from our fire-loving fighter, Tim, who said, "I don't want to burn him, Arthur." Arthur being our lawful good fighter. The party ended up leaving him alive after extracting a promise not to do anything of the sort again. The fire-loving fighter, Tim, actually ended up giving him a few gold coins to buy his kid a new pair of shoes, after stealing the gold previously. You would think this would be the end of it. They left, they went off on their adventures, found more leads, started doing more stuff. However, at some point, it became important to go check on him again and see if he could lead them to the particular bar that he mentioned and see if he could help them figure out who exactly hired him. Because it was all part of a much larger conspiracy, with the governor's son, with the governor, with a couple very important men in town, with the bard's whole family, actually, as well. So, the party tracks him back down. When they got to the workhouse, they are met by a stern woman who apparently runs the place, who lets them in after checking with Judier himself. Judier comes forward to greet them, fairly open to helping them out, obviously grateful for having been spared his life. In the room is also a small girl, about 8 or 10 years old, playing with some rag dolls. That's his daughter, Farron. The party talk with him, and he's able to give them some more information. It's revealed that the person who hired him is a very dangerous man, and you are very likely to have your family killed, or people disappear, or be blackmailed if you don't follow his rules and if you rat him out. So Judier had told him all he could without risking his daughter's life, because he was well aware that if he actually ratted out the larger boss, shit would fall down. And he wouldn't be there, necessarily, or he wouldn't be able to protect his daughter. The party promised him protection. He had seen them up close and personal, obviously, but defeated by them almost easily. And after some hard consideration, he accepted their protection in exchange for information. He gave them a name, he told them where to go, and then he gathered up his daughter and their few belongings and was taken by the party to their current base of operations, just a tavern owned by a friend of the family. Of the Bard's family, I should say. They were rather at the center of this whole larger mess of a plot. But this happens to be just focusing on Judier himself. Judier and Farron get taken to the tavern, which is functioning at the current HQ, and they basically hang out and try to stay out of the way while the party goes about the rest of their business in the city. After the party defeats they find his boss, they track down the larger boss controlling him, they defeat somebody else, the larger conclusion to this overarching arc, which lasted months. It's quite interesting. A little complicated, but a bit interesting. But after all that happened, they were going to escort Judier and his daughter to a new city to start a new life. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because that thug could have been just a faceless bad guy. Spit and curse and, you'll never defeat us, or, just damn you, or I'm not gonna talk, or, he talks just like nothing humanizing about him, nothing to feel sorry for or identify with, nothing to make it more than just black and white. Sometimes in life there are enemies who are just black and white. No one's going to go point at the Nazis and say, oh yeah, lots of gray here. Like, no, Nazis were bad, but, in the larger scheme of things, then oftentimes things are not just black and white. This man had committed bad things. He flat out has committed crimes. He was not a great guy, but he also wasn't exactly the worst. When the party talked to him later, they learned that he did a lot of what he did because he wasn't allowed back out of it. He had started on doing jobs for very powerful people, and when he realized that he didn't feel good doing what he was doing, he didn't feel like it was right, or that he should be making money off of other people suffering, and when he tried to get out of it, they just kept dragging him back in. He didn't have enough power to get far away enough or to protect him and his daughter enough, so he was basically forced to keep doing it. But again, you can sit here and debate maybe he could have taken her and tried to disappear or whatever. Like, you can sit here and debate that, but the point being is that he was a lot more complicated than just, haha, enemy hit with sword. Money good. And that all that development, like all that character depth, really added to our world. It's like, I know that I won't forget this character, and a lot of the other players, like, he was a name that we talked about out of character, out of game, just, a decent amount, because he was just an interesting character with more going on. And that wouldn't have happened had I not taken, just added a little bit of something humanizing in when the party spared one of the thugs. Because the thugs, I just said, okay, they're basically faceless thugs. Here's a bunch of guys with swords or running at you because money or something. Yeah, kill them, cool. And then they did, but when they left one alive, it was like, just, okay. They're not just he's not like, he wouldn't just be a faceless cardboard cutout. He would have something else in his life, something deeper. And I just thought it would be interesting to say, okay, this guy's a dad. In fact, he's a single dad. In fact, he's concerned about the livelihood of his kid, and that's why he does what he does. Because at the end of the day, there's like, the drive to protect your children is very strong. And that could lead someone to doing things they would not necessarily otherwise do. And so that seemed to be a good motivation for why this guy would be taking money that he doesn't feel comfortable taking. Because at the end of the day, it's to protect his daughter. And they were paid 50 GP. 50 GP to someone of that lifestyle level is insane. Like, I don't remember the conversions off the top of my head, but just keep in mind that when we're talking commoner level stuff, we're talking in sums of silver pieces. Not GP, usually. And when it is GP, it's like, okay, 5 and under for, like, blacksmithing, which, let's not forget, is a high skill level craft, expensive materials, like, that's the top of the, peasantry. This guy wasn't, like, his living conditions were very poor. And it was obvious he was pretty hard on in life. So, to be handed 50 GP to kidnap some people, it would have gotten him and his daughter out of there. He could have paid for travel. He could have paid enough to just live off it for a while. So he didn't have to kill people, or kidnap people, or commit any other wrongdoing in order to survive. That money would have bought a new life, and that's why he took this job. That's what the party saw. They could have taken him in. That city did actually have a pretty strong justice system. Over the board, mostly fair courts. There's still corruption, because you're always going to have corruption somewhere, but like, over the whole, the city itself is a fairly just and fair city, all things considered. They could have taken him in, and he would have gotten sentenced, because he's done kidnapping, he's done who God knows what. I mean, Judier's mostly a low-level bodyguard, bouncer level kind of stuff, but he will do kidnapping, he will do other things, like he has, I should say, not that he wants to. But yeah, it just added some interest. Like, the party could have turned him in, but they kind of went, you just want to move on now. And then you're no longer the bad guy. Or at least you don't want to be anymore. We'll give you a chance to not be the bad guy anymore. And to raise your kid with her. Because neither he nor they knew where her mother was. And there was no other family. Like, he was all she had in the world. And the party themselves, not all of them are the... Like, no one in the party has the, oh, the goblins burned my village down backstory. Like, I'm actually truly proud of the party. They're all completely new to TTRPGs and role-playing, and their first characters didn't have any of these tropes. It was amazing. They weren't cliche. They weren't like, alright, we have a tiefling bard, and he played originally about what you'd expect a tiefling bard to be. But, like, you know, we had a human fighter, he does take sword hit thing, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they really didn't do too many of all those cliches and tropes. There's nothing wrong with those, but it just was really cool to see. But anyway, that aside, I can rant about my party all day. Like, I can gush about my party all day. But, which is really cool to see what you can do with a simple character that didn't have to be deep, but just making him giving a little more humanization, a little more depth, made it way more fun for all of us, and it was interesting to see how the characters reacted to it. Would they sympathize with him? Would they condemn him? How would they treat this situation? Because it's a lot more complicated than just hit thing, because haha, money. So anyway, that was my slightly long-winded story. I apologize if that kind of got a little out of hand, but what are other times that you had a NPC you weren't expecting to turn out interesting? Or you made an NPC in a story that you weren't looking to make something cool out of, you were just like, hey, here's a bad guy, hit it a whole bunch. And what did you think of Judier? Or other characters like that, where they're a lot more in-depth and a lot more complicated than just black and white, bad, good. You know, this guy completely evil, this guy completely good. So, what's your thoughts? This is Trenchcoat Kobold, signing out.